So, a new Digimon fan translation just dropped. Digimon, a series that's always been in Pokemon Shadow during my childhood.
Oh, it's the wannabe Pokemon clone again.
An ignorant mindset I've come to deeply regret as soon as I play through Digimon World 1. This franchise actually rules, if only for transforming these little furballs into these absolute abominations through the fun as hell mechanic of digivolving and degenerating. Now, I ain't exactly an expert or anything, as I've only played through a handful of games, and still need to look at the evolution branches endlessly to scope out what I want and need. But I did in fact play through the encounter hell that is Digimon World Dusk. A joy to the seasoned Digimon player, but absolute hell for any player looking to get into the franchise. The story is non-existent. There's an overwhelming amount of mechanics thrown at you right off the rip. The encounter rate is like... turning it into a newcomer unfriendly grinding hellhole that becomes far too difficult and far too grindy for its own good. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a great time with the game, but in order to provide a more complete experience, the game clearly needed a bit of a revision. A revision that would come to fruition a year or three later, in Digimon Story, Lost Evolution. As it's pretty much considered Dawn and Dusk sequel, reusing their sprites, tilesets, areas and ideas. And thus, I will refer to it as such. To me, Digimon Story Lost Evolution is the more definitive edition of Dawn and Dusk, that nobody ever got to enjoy as it never left Japan. Dawn and Dusk only sold a few 100,000 copies combined, and I'm only assuming they couldn't be bothered to invest in localizing Lost Evolution if it was gonna sell like trash outside of Japan anyway. So the lovely people over at Operation Decoded did it for them instead. I got wind of this as late as the day of release on January 1st and didn't even hesitate for a second. I had to play and talk about this thing. Is it a little weird to start in the middle of a series? Will I simultaneously piss off hardcore fans and confuse the rest with my suboptimal knowledge of overwhelming mechanics? Yeah, but I'll make a desperate attempt to ride my way out of it and we'll see where it goes. Digimon Story Lost Evolution starts with the player character watching a celebratory fireworks show, when suddenly it turns out to be a collapsed spaceship, some baddies ditching a Numemon, and a random Agumon choosing you as its tamer to fight and beat them. Upon beating up the poor Numemon, a short conversation follows, until a digiship pops out of the spaceship and abducts everyone to the Digiverse, where everything goes to shit for the sake of the plot, of course, as you don't just get separated from some of your friends, but are also chosen as the savior of the Digiverse. There's an evil force that calls themselves the Selectors, who are trying to reset the world to its old state by sending so-called erasers to get rid of anything they deem unnecessary, starting with the Digibase and any Digimon hanging around the area. Considering all Tamers have mysteriously disappeared for obvious reasons, and Agumon just chose you as a Tamer a whole minute ago, it's now all up to you to fix this mess. And who knows, maybe you'll even run into your friends along the way. So yeah, Lost Evolution actually has a decent story for Digimon standards, especially compared to whatever the hell Dawn and Dusk storyline was. I liked seeing what your lost friends were up to, meeting the main players and seeing the world's software reset develop and culminate into a cool and fitting ending. However, these story segments were few and far between, as Digimon games are, and always will be, about the RPG grind. You know, with like stats, levels, evolutions, equipment, and lots of random encounters. The game's still a tad bit too grindy for the casual player, but is without a doubt more accessible than Dawn and Dusk ever were. Which is a good thing actually. Looking at this gameplay, you're probably thinking, this looks an awful lot like Dawn and Dusk. And that's because it is. This, however, isn't. But it still could very well be. Lost Evolution very much feels like an extension of Dawn and Dusk. For the eye test, the games appear to be nearly identical. Identical tilesets, assets and color palettes, identical character and Digimon sprites. Even the menus are exact replicas, and much of the gameplay also shares a good amount of similarities, with i.e. the same equipment and farmlands making their return. But on the flip side, the gameplay is where Lost Evolution really makes a difference. The biggest player here is the Digivolution tree, controller of everything Digivolution. When the erasers come hang out at the Digibase to do some erasing, they also wreak havoc on this tree of life. Gatomon is able to restore its functionality, but oh no, everything's erased aside from some babies and rookies. So now, instead of having every Digimon available from the get-go like in Dawn and Dusk, you'll gradually unlock the path to the abomination of your choice by the game-defining mechanic. That is, the digiplate. Obtained by enemy drop, Digimon expeditions or quest reward, every Digimon has its own digiplate that needs to be placed back in the Digi-tree. But not before repairing the thing for 30 up to 120 seconds each by drilling, patching, wiping and spraying to reach the high score of 100. Now, how much can a simple mechanic like this control a game? A lot. The answer is a lot. I've always been a big fan of how the Digivolution system works. It goes deeper than the basic reach level X and evolve idea. Digimon need to meet certain stat requirements, defeated X amount of a certain species like in Dawn and Dusk, or be able to reach a certain max level. If one doesn't meet those requirements, you then degenerate the thing back to its prior evolution or further to raise its level cap, mana and or work on its stats. It's such an addicting and satisfying back and forth, taking a step back to return even stronger. Not to mention turning a Digimon into a whole different species by the magical warp paths, which makes things interconnected and provide you with tons of options. Why the equipment's gotta come off for evolution in this game is a mystery to me though. Luckily there's an auto-equip button. In Lost Evolution, the Tree of Life has wrapped its hands all around this system. There are the more non-intrusive additions of revived Digimon evolution requirements and the ability to sacrifice a Digimon to equipment like boost the stats of another, which is fucking evil. You're also only able to check a Digimon evolution branch at the tree rather than on the go, making me wonder what the hell I was doing half the time. But more importantly, it controls evolution itself. It's simple. No digiplate, no evolution. It doesn't exist. If anything, it gives the game a sense of balance. The game decides when you're allowed to upgrade. Ultimate form plates start dropping when the enemies have reached ultimate form. Mega form plates when they're all largely megas, and with a much more toned down encounter rate than in Dawn and Dusk, you just about obtain the next plate as you're reaching the current form's level cap. It's genuinely great to always feel at an adequate strength by just advancing, not having to deal with the Dawn and Dusk like insane difficulty spikes, even against bosses. About as great as not being interrupted by a random encounter every 3 fucking seconds, and having to beat them for experience for said difficulty spikes as well. Dawn and Dusk's encounter rate is amongst some of the most toxic I have ever experienced, not being able to stay in the overworld for more than a few steps, only to then having to sit through the painfully slow enemy scanning animation that is needed to be able to generate one of that species of your own, once they're above 100%. And then, when the battle was over, I just felt disoriented, because I was never truly able to digest my surroundings. Lost Evolution does none of this. You're actually able to walk around and take space before an encounter, and the scanning animation pretty much got X'd as well. Running away still takes a tad bit too long for my liking, but with the way this game is set up, there will be very few situations where you'll want to do so anyway. And you know what the best part is of this rebalancing? They got rid of species experience. No more endless mowdowns of a singular type because one of your Digimon needs that species experience to evolve. No more wasting hours because said singular type is a rare fucking spawn. No more god damn it type of moments. You don't even need to check the convoluted DNA evolution charts that sparked frustration. Despite the idea of combining different Digimon to form a new species being cool as hell. Just a unified and simple experience system, like it always should have been. Not to mention they finally made plant and insect two separate species, rather than lumping them together. Shit was long overdue. Battles themselves are largely the same as Dawn and Dusk's. The classic 3 vs 3s aside from boss fights, with only being able to switch in your 3 subs at once when your 3 main players are all dead. Funky tactical stat decreasing, status inflicting, multi or single target attacks that increase in strength by level up and or evolution that all got that sluggish low budget vibe to their animations. And consumable items other than the let's head home gate disc being useless as always, as leveling up resets HP and mana to full. They did switch things up a little bit by giving a visual cue for resistances and weaknesses, removing multi-hit attacks entirely and adding a knockback effect that swaps the hit Digimon for one of your substitutes. This time around, the available moves are limited to 4, not only to add more tactical depth in carefully choosing what to keep, but also to be able to shove the move menu in your face, rather than the clean bottom right one. However, none of these changes are significant enough to make it anything else than more power equals more death. It's a somewhat bare-bones battle system executed to perfection, enabling the use of the game's other key features, while also being quick enough and challenging at various points to never lose that sense of satisfaction throughout all of those hours spent on them. Legitimately making it one of the least interesting things to talk about in this video, because I wouldn't want it any other way. There are still no repels to fend off encounters or any sort of area map though, causing me to get lost in the maze of every path looking like every path, without any notable landmarks. Even the fact they rather lazily one-on-one copied areas from Dawn and Dusk like Loop Swamp, assets and everything didn't really make things easier. I mostly just wandered around the same corners and hoped for the best. But hey, I found my way eventually due to the areas not being all too big. Being able to use your stylus to scout a nearby area and having unlockable checkpoints aka digiports to fly to at any time was somewhat of an improvement over Dawn and Dusk as well. Though walking past the key to said digiport and having to re-explore an area because rather than a checkpoint, the remainder of the area is locked behind it, kinda turned out to be a problem in and of itself. Heh. Locked out. Words that silently escaped my mouth on various occasions during my playthrough. While the game controlling your digivolutions brings about a sense of balance, it also gets to decide where and when it applies said balance, thus making the balance imbalanced. With digiplates being predominantly obtained by enemy drop, you'll have to encounter and beat an enemy first to get their own degenerations or digivolutions digiplate. And well, 314 obtainable Digimon don't fit in a single area. This means certain digiplates will be obtained hours before others, be tucked away in optional areas the plot breezes past, or the Digimon won't drop its Digivolutions plate at all. So you start working on the owl and the cats, only for them to be passed by a Kuramon I spawned 10 hours in, and the Hawkmon I had benched for half the playthrough, while they were stuck in their shitty inferior forms. You start working on Agumon, only to figure out its final evolution Omnimon consists of an A and a B plate, of which I only obtained one each after 3 hours of grinding, alongside 2 war plates I never actually obtained. I then spent 3 hours stuck in this area after missing the gate's key and obtained a whole 0 Rosemon burst plates, up to the point where I thought she didn't actually drop it. Rosemon burst mode that I needed to get through via Numaimon's warp evolution in the first place because I never obtained Sunflowermon's digiplate, despite fighting 7,000 Lalamons that should drop it. It's dumb. It's dumb that I can fight a Digimon for an average of 2 hours an area and not get its digiplate. It's dumb that the block can pass by an optional area to prevent me from digivolving until I realize shit's taking far too long. It's dumb that I need an online user guide to figure out I could have digivolved about 10 hours ago, because the game has no feature telling you where to get any plate. Dumb to a point where you know you can only enjoy a Digimon temporarily, until the next roadblock will eventually filter it out of the team. But hey, at least they copied Pokemon's HM mechanic. Am I right? Whoa. I sure as hell loved walking around with Tremon and Kulamon instead of my desired teammates to break rocks and dive in order to be allowed to advance. And not like I was having trouble keeping a team together for more than an area, due to other reasons already. Nah, it really ain't all that bad. The plot only requires a Digimon with the dive and cut ability a handful of times, and most of my main squad eventually mastered one of the field abilities anyway. But the mostly optional paths locked behind the obstacles contain useful items, funky chest high reward mini boss fights, and digiplates I actually needed. Thanks game. So yeah, I don't think I've ever ran around with more than half of my preferred squadron, because Fission 3 needed to do Fission 3 things. Hated this in Pokemon, hated equally as much in this game. Just give me like a fucking scuba suit and a pickaxe upon reaching certain story events, and I'll probably praise this shit for making areas have replay value, instead of crippling my team even further than the already annoying ass digiplay cogblock, which I haven't even gotten to the bottom of. cleaning digiplates is without a doubt the game's most important aspect. Not just because of unlocking evolutions, but also its direct impact on the battles and the sheer amount of time you spend doing it. Now, I can hear you think, don't you just collect the digiplates you need and leave the rest to collect dust? You really think they design a mechanic like this and not shove it in your face? Come on now. Cleaning these things has a high score and a timer for a reason, initiating a chain reaction of unfortunate consequences. You get a set amount of time to fix a plate based on the plate's difficulty. If you manage to patch the entire thing up in that time frame, the score is 100, and you've got nothing to worry about. If you're unsuccessful, however, any hole, putty or dirt that remains will be subtracted from your overall score. And lock you out of moves. Yeah, digivolving ain't worth shit if you get a bad score on a plate, as you'll only learn low-powered dog shit moves. So, what's keeping me from getting a good score? Well, cleaning becomes increasingly more difficult the further along the tree of pain you get, up to the point where you're unable to get 100 points unless you upgrade your tools in Tamer Town. Man. In a way, it's rather poetic how the price of a sponge and a water hose can ruin a game. The little things really do matter. To unlock half-decent moves, you need a good score. To get a good score, you need better tools. To get better tools, you need money. And there is no money. You can sell some items here and there, get a couple hundred from a battle, but goddamn, is it hard to get by. Halfway point onwards, you can buy these 30% drop boost rings that do speed things up a bit, but at that point shit was already so far ahead that I could never catch up. I did manage to reach the 200k needed along the way, only to get my teeth kicked in even harder by a new pickaxe hitting the market. Pain. The game gives you no choice but to save all game, as you'll only score 23 points on the final evolution plates without them, thus rendering them useless. And even then, I ended up 150,000 short by the time I reached the final area, after 26 hours and 47 minutes of having purchased nothing aside from the boost rings. What I'm saying is, I cheated, okay? I did it. I cheated. I got one singular Rosemont burst mode plate after 3.5 hours, and I wasn't gonna wait the 7.5 hours it would take for me to finally buy the goddamn pickaxe. So yeah, I action replayed that shit to 100%, and I don't regret a
damn thing.
In hindsight, I should have cheated the money too, for the sake of the rest of the game's features. There's no money for consumable items, no money to juggle around equipment with different stats, resistances and bonuses, no money for the fun as fuck digifarm they brought over from Dawn and Dusk. I fucking love these funky little islands allowing you to grow your Digimon outside of your team, even if the daily farm update call gets on my nerves at times. Upgrading the island for more daily experience, buying mini showers and weapon huts to gain stats or craft equipable weapons, letting them go on expeditions for consumables or even bug plates. I had money for none of that. only dealing with the free level 1 cock I was given and the consumables, equipments and farm goods I received from enemies or rewards, leaving me with basic consumables, basic equipment and an island that fell far behind in experience, stats and retrieved items compared to just getting shit done manually. That 150 experience and 200 HP medicine a day ain't cutting it, dog. I only found the funds and time for any of this near the very end, as there is one more major roadblock thrown your way to truly get under your skin. For the final segment, the game wants you to do what is essentially a boss rush, to raise your Tamer rank from nothing to platinum, with every rank having a Tamer points requirement, peaking at 57,500. I had not enough. About 21,200 points are free through 6 mandatory and 4 optional quests, and the scores you get for cleaning digiplates along the way are converted to Tamer points as well, gaining you an additional couple thousand. But reaching the requirement forward, you'll still need 10 to 15 hours to grind out the other 30k. And that just fucking sucks. You can get points from online battles. Or not. You either clean digiplates for an eternity or clear the remaining quests, both being slow as fuck no matter what. Cleaning plates takes 70 seconds on average between the 30 to 120 tiers, followed by a 30-second unskippable score cutscene, using the 20-second Lobmon auto repair that unlocks after cleaning 1 copy of a certain plate, as the drawback of lowballing your score until you feed in more of the same plate, and generating Digimon to unlock the remaining Tamer point quests that need specific nature Digimon for whatever the fuck reason, is all up to RNG. Meaning you'll have to go out in the field to get enough scam percentage to generate it, to then reset your DS forever, since generating uses all of it. And I sure as hell wasn't going to fight them shits again, just to generate the wrong nature. Not to mention the quests themselves, taking up an hour each of course. I don't think I have to elaborate how boring and tedious this all became. I like Digimon Story, Lost Evolution. The mechanics are flawed, the tilesets are reused, and roadblocks are the name of the game. But in the end, it's still a Digimon game. And the core idea behind this goofy little RPG is more than enough to overrule any wonky idea. In the end, the gameplay still largely revolves around beating up enemies, gaining experience and evolving, degenning, reviving and stat boosting your way to the coolest of cool creatures. That's much less of a chore than in Dawn and Dusk. And that already gives it an edge over those games to me. No encounter hell, no species experience, no long ass scanning animation, no absurd difficulty spikes, just a fun grind like a Digimon game should be. Just for that, I'll forgive the game for its shortcomings. The digiplate Digimon and moves cockblock, the shortage of money, the lame ass fucking field abilities, the base destroying Tamer points requirement. All essentially good ideas with a subpar execution that are about one change away from adding value rather than subtracting. But yeah, I fuck with it. I wouldn't have spent 50 hours on it if I didn't, and most certainly wouldn't have cleaned 30,000 points worth of digiplates to reach the ending. If anything, it sure as hell teaches you to have patience and to cope with the inaccessibility of anything really. And that's gotta be worth something. Right? Hello? Anyone?